Hello and welcome to Nexus Extra. This week we've been covering President Donald Trump's state visit to the UK. In this extended section, we're looking at the massive security operation staged by both the British and the Americans. In a moment, we'll be speaking to Philip Ingram. He is a military intelligence specialist who was in the British Army for 26 years. But first, let's go to Sarah Morris on the street, who has been covering the story for us all week.
Despite all the money that the UK is spending trying to keep Donald Trump safe, his own security team have brought just about everything but the kitchen sink with them. He flew over on Air Force One, his plane which can withstand enemy attack mid-air. We're told it can throw flares and also jam radar. Once here in the UK, he's been flying around in his chopper. It's called Marine One. He brought two of them. One's a decoy. And if he does drive around, well, he's been driving around in his Cadillac known as the Beast. He also bought two of those. Again, one's a decoy, but the Beast, we're told, is completely bulletproof. It can also shoot tear gas and it's completely sealed, so he's safe if there's a chemical attack. But let's be honest, the most hostile thing that Donald Trump has faced here in the UK has been the grisly British weather, so I hope someone remembered to throw in the brolly.
OK, now we can join Philip Ingram, who spent 26 years in the British Army, much of that in the military intelligence. Philip, a massive operation. Talk us through it. How would London have prepared for Donald Trump's visit?
Oh, huge operation. This will have started months beforehand, whenever the Secret Service, who are responsible for the security of the president, will have flown in, liaised with the in-London security teams that they have in the US Embassy, who've got connections out into MI5, MI6, GCHQ, and the Metropolitan Police, who will have been responsible for the overall security for the presidential visit.
And who takes the lead, the British or the Americans?
The British take the lead. Donald Trump was a guest in our country. It is the UK's responsibility, and we've got some of the best counter-terror police and security services in the world. So, and they train and work with the their American equivalents frequently, and therefore the Americans trust them and trust they know that they can provide the level of security that the President of the United States deserves.
Of all their allies in the world, do they actually trust each other the most when it comes to intelligence?
Well, in the intelligence community, there's what's called the Five Eyes community, and that's America, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And it's there for two reasons. One, intelligence sharing, but also it's carved the world up in such a way that the different countries can collect intelligence on behalf of other countries. So it's a very trusted network. Okay. And those are the areas that work closest together.
Just get into the nitty-gritty for us, some of the actual precautions they take. They get into the sewers. What else do they do?
Well, what will happen is there'll be the routes will be very carefully planned. They'll look at anywhere that a threat could be put on the routes. And you mentioned the sewers. So if you've got a manhole cover, they'll check and see that there's nothing down there and then seal the manhole cover and put a seal on top of it so they can check and see if that's broken. They'll look at the buildings that are around and see what public access there are to them and see whether there's a sniper risk from those buildings. They'll look at side roads and see whether anyone could come down with a vehicle and try and intercept the convoy in that way, or whether crowds could move in to try and access to it. And all of that will be looked at very, very closely, put as part of the planning detail, and routes and activities will be planned around mitigating any risk that they've identified as part of the process.
And Philip, take a look at the motorcade for us. We have the Beast, pretty much everyone's aware of that. And then we have an enormous sort of line of other vehicles. So just tell us a bit about the Beast and what the other vehicles and the other personnel do.
Well, the Beast, there's actually two of them in most convoys. There's a standby one and the one that POTUS will travel in. And I think it sits up to 7 people. It costs $1.5 million. It's armored, and if you think of a normal armored car, it's much stronger than that. It's got its own integrated oxygen supply, filters to stop chemical weapons and biological weapons coming into it. It carries defensive suites that are in there to protect the occupants, and allegedly carries even some of the president's own blood, just in case he does get wounded. That's in there. It's a very sophisticated
And the other
car.
vehicles?
The other vehicles that are there have got their own specific tasks. There's a communications vehicle that allows the president to be connected to everywhere he needs to be across the globe. So he's a mobile command and control headquarters. There's also special nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare vehicle, but it's a chemical defense vehicle that will carry what they need to do to be able to identify any chemical threats, biological threats, and things to mitigate those. There's a special electronics countermeasures vehicle that can jam anything that it needs to if there's an attack that comes in. And then there's specialist response vehicles that are there with quick reaction forces in them to be able to protect the president if a threat does come in there.
Crucially, tell us about the football, as it's innocuously called, the nuclear launch codes.
Yeah, there's that never leaves the president's side. You always see a uniformed military officer, and very often a naval officer, carrying this very heavy, overladen briefcase, and he's usually 2 or 3 paces behind the president. That carries the presidential nuclear launch codes, and has done ever since America had their own nuclear deterrent capability. And it stays close to the president because if you look at if the world is falling apart and nuclear war is potentially an option that's out there, some of the countries that could attack the United States could launch the missiles within tens of minutes, and the president has to be able to respond to that on advice from the chairman of his Joint Chiefs and elsewhere, and therefore he needs those codes to be able to authorize those launches by him at all times, because he may only have minutes to make what is an absolutely horrific and world-changing decision.
Philip Ingram, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Nexus Extra. And thank you for watching. If you want to see this again or any of our other episodes, the full episodes, do check us out at our YouTube channel.